Hello and welcome back to the She Lives Purposefully podcast. My name is Megan and I'm the host of this podcast, and I am so excited that you are here for our Maternity Leave Series. So these episodes are recorded a little beforehand while I am away with my baby boy and my husband. So sweet. And this series I basically am bringing on past guests that are your favorites and also friends of mine to talk about what God has been teaching them, and specifically what he's been teaching them that they want to pour back out onto the church, onto you. And today I am so excited to have my sweet friend Julia on the podcast. Julia, welcome to the She Lives Purposefully podcast.
Guys. Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. Julia brought me little starbs.
The essentials.
Sweet treat. Well, there's actually nothing sweet. Just a decaf coffee. Yeah, Julia, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and we can jump in.
I am Julia. Me and Megan have been friends for eight years, I think. Like this coming fall, 8 years.
Stop.
Yeah, 2016. We met at Young Adults at our church in 2016. Right after I graduated high school. It was the first time I started coming to Young Adults. We met there. Megan was like the first person that I met, first person that I talked to. Yeah, that was 8 years ago already.
I feel like that story always makes me sentimental.
I know. And it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. Almost 10 years. That's a long time.
I really feel like I'm having trouble comprehending that it's been 8 years. That's wild.
Crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. Time is freaking flying.
It really is.
I don't know if I've ever said freaking on the podcast. I'm just realizing right now. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Well, yeah, Julia is one of my sweet, closest friends. She was in my wedding. And she is truly like the most joyful human being that I know. But yeah, tell us a little bit more. Sorry, I totally cut you off, I feel like, in that little intro.
You're good.
Who you
yeah.
are. What are you doing? What are you up to right now?
What do? I work at our church. I work in the church office, and I work just with a couple ministries there. I've been working there for the past couple of months. Yeah, that's basically what I'm doing right now.
Julia is literally the best, best human being. And I'm so excited that she's going to be on the podcast today. We realized too, we knew this already, that she's been on the podcast before, but it was probably one of the first set of episodes because this was back before I was married, living at my parents' house.
Yep.
And you were still in college.
Yeah. It was maybe like 6 years ago.
Yeah. I'll have to link that episode in the show notes too.
Yeah.
I think it was about friendship.
Yeah. I think it was like friendships in college, like as a believer on a college campus.
Yeah.
How to make friends and go about navigating, the college things, staying away from all the partying and stuff like that when it's so prevalent.
No, I love that. I think I literally just got a Dear Meg question about that. So maybe we should answer that today. Now I'm just thinking that out loud.
Oh.
Or I'm wondering if I have that scheduled for an episode in July. I don't know. Maybe we'll pause this at one point to see, because I feel like that'd be such a good answer, question to answer today. Yeah, I'm so baffled. 8 years ago. So crazy. But yes, you were on the podcast before.
Yep.
Such a fun episode. I feel like it's one of our most loved episodes, which is sweet. I feel like truly so many things around like friendship and even just like navigating the secular world and how to be a light in the world, which really it's kind of what it was about, like all collectively,
right,
are such big topics that people really love to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for people in their 20s, people who are in college, people who are trying to make friends post-college.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, I feel like that seeps into even like early 30s and just like now too, like mid 30s, late 30s, like just friendships and navigating that. Yeah, I feel like post-college, it's really hard. It can be really hard to like
as
have
a
good
Christian,
circle of
make friends.
Yeah, and make friends. That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you're my friend.
I'm glad you're my friend. Don't mind the fact that we're matching.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I forgot to bring that up. She walked in the door today, and I think it was the first thing out of my mouth. We're matching. literally black top. If you're watching on YouTube, black top, and then like tan pants. Yours are cute. They're like a striped, like it's very cute. I love your pants.
Thank you.
They're cuter, I think.
They're really comfy.
But yeah, we're basically identical. I almost wore a necklace here too.
Oh my gosh.
But then I was like, we would have been like
to the down
T.
to the necklace.
Yeah. That's so crazy. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Okay, so kind of jumping into things, just like a brief summary, like what has the Lord been speaking to you about? What are we talking about today? Like overall, like an overarching view.
Yeah. So I've been reading in Luke the past couple of months, sort of. I've been going through it like slowly. And I feel like I've read Luke before, but as I've been going through it this time, I feel like I've gotten so many new things out of it. And especially when I was reading in Luke chapter 8, the part, it's like the story of the woman who has the blood condition and then Jairus and his daughter. And I was reading through that a couple weeks ago. And I feel like I had always read that story and comprehended the part with the lady who had the blood condition and then the part with Jairus' daughter when she got raised. But there was a part in the middle, kind of when Jesus is ministering to the woman as he's going along to Jairus' house. And Jairus is standing there watching Jesus work in the life of this woman, waiting for Jesus to come and heal his daughter and well, not raise her because he didn't know yet that she was dead, but to come and heal his daughter. And it kind of just like stuck out to me as I was reading it, what Jairus must have been feeling as he was standing there watching Jesus minister to this woman as he's waiting there for Jesus to come work in his life. So it just kind of was a lesson to me in waiting on the Lord and just seeing how Jesus still worked in Jairus' life. He didn't forget about Jairus. He still worked in his life, even though Jairus had to wait there for Jesus to come work in his life.
So good. You sent me this topic that you wanted to talk about before. And so I was like kind of taking, different notes on it, just looking at it a little bit. And I'm really excited to dive into, especially like what he must have been feeling. Cause I feel like I would be just an unhealthy mindset. I feel like so hard where you're like, okay, he's on his way. He's going to do a work in my life. Like he's going to heal my daughter. And then he like stops and he works in somebody else's life first. And I feel like however that looks in life, which we can dive into, but whether it's just something that you've been waiting for, like whatever it could be, like it doesn't even have to be necessarily that you're looking for like healing from something, but maybe just like a blessing that you really want, and you're like, okay, like I'm trusting that he's going to give me this. And then like somebody else gets it first. And you're like, I thought that this was going to be for me.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. But before we really go in, do you want to read the passage itself?
Yeah. So it's Luke 8 and it's verses 40 to 56. So I'll read it. It says, "Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. As Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, 'Who was it who touched me?' When all denied it, Peter said, 'Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you.' But Jesus said, 'Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me.' And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, and declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace.' While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, 'Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any more.' But Jesus, on hearing this, answered, 'Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well.' And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and James and John, and the father and the mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, 'Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping.' And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called her, saying, 'Child, arise.' And her spirit returned, and she got up at once, and he directed that something should be given to her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened.
There's so much.
I know. So much in that story.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I feel like the waiting on the Lord aspect is so huge. And I don't think I've ever really realized that before too. Like, I think I would have associated that even more with the woman who was like bleeding for 12 years almost. Because I'm like, she waited for so long and then she went for it. Like, Jesus was there. Which also, I feel like that's even huge too.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I feel like we have lost the ability or like the skill, quote unquote, of like waiting on God, where we want everything like, okay, why didn't you do this like in a week or a day, you know, or an hour? And she was waiting like 12 years. And so many people in the Old Testament too, it's like 40 years they like, you know, wandered, or 40 years that they, you know, different things like that. Like, it's a long time. But like, it's not a long time to the Lord. Like, the Lord has his perfect timing. But then too, like you were talking about with Jairus, like,
as he's standing there waiting,
it's
as like Jesus is working in someone else's life.
Like interrupted. Like, his miracle was about to happen.
Like, he comes and he falls down at Jesus's feet and he's like, Lord, come heal my daughter. Jesus agrees and is walking with him. And then there's this pause, this interruption where this woman comes. And I just can't even imagine what Jairus must have been thinking as he was standing there. Like, Jesus, you were walking with me. Like, you were coming to work in my life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you stop and you work in this woman's life.
And then he gets like worse news.
Yeah.
Which is all the more frustrating. I have to assume where it's like, now it's even worse. And it didn't have to be. Like, you could have done it before. And
if you only would have just come with me when I asked you to.
Yeah. And not like pivoted to somebody else. And then I feel like too, it probably even like, I'm just putting myself in his shoes very vaguely, because I, like, God forbid, would never want to be like in that situation. I mean, how awesome would it be that Jesus literally comes? But like, just that situation, like the beforehand of like, you know, his child is so sick, about to die, which is so heartbreaking, but so real life too. And like, but Jesus is coming. I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh my gosh. Literally always. I feel like it's happening in every episode lately. My baby brain. Oh my goodness. What was it? Oh, yes. Okay. So like, Jesus is like, okay, he says he's going to help me, but then he pivots to somebody else. I think it also would make me feel like he doesn't care as much as I thought he did about me, because if he did, he would have jumped on it right away.
Yeah.
And that's like not the Lord at all. Like, the Lord has like a different plan and an even better plan. But I think it would make me feel like, oh, he doesn't even care.
Right. And by Jairus's rationale and the human rationale, like how we would think, it's like, Lord, you have to come now. You have to hurry before she dies.
Yes.
Because if you don't come and hurry with me before she dies, then it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
But it's like the Lord's timing is so much better than our timing. His ways are higher than our ways. And he didn't need to get there before she died in order for him to work in the situation still.
Yeah. And like, how much more powerful, even like in his waiting, what he was able to do, like raise her from the dead, which is so crazy. And then too, I mean, this is total pivot, but then he's like, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Just so crazy. But yeah, like, he was able to do something even more miraculous in the waiting, which is so cool. But I do think from our perspective, it's like, why would you let this happen in the first place? Why didn't you fix this immediately? There's no rationale in my brain. Like, even I could foresee, even like, he raises her from the dead, and still maybe Jazz could have been like, all right, it didn't even have to go this far though.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I could see my brain going there, and that's probably not, you know, that just shows my heart, but yeah.
But it's just so crazy to think about the fact that Jesus knew all along what was going to happen. He knew this woman was going to come and touch his garment, and that he was going to stop and take time to minister to her and say to her, like, daughter, go in peace. Your faith has made you well. And he knew that Jairus was going to be standing there watching all of this happen.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, just such a reminder. It's like, it's not that Jesus got sidetracked or that it even, maybe, I mean, in his human self, he's like, okay, I just felt power taken from me. Who is this? Kind of thing. But like the Lord does know it's not that things interrupt his plan for real, kind of. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not that it's like, oh, well, now I have to pivot and I'm scrambling and I'm anxious. Like from the perspective of God, God knew the whole thing that was going to be played out beforehand. Jairus didn't know.
Right.
But like the Lord did know. He knew every detail of like that whole day or whole couple days and how that was going to be played out, which is just so encouraging, I think, in our own lives too. It's like, okay, even for me when it seems like everything is totally awry, the Lord goes before me and he like knows everything beforehand, which I think makes it a little bit easier to trust his timing.
Yeah. Right. Because then it's like when you think about this, or when I was reading it, I was like, okay, what are the things that I'm rushing the Lord in? If I was Jairus standing there watching this happen, I probably would have been like, Jesus, come on, like we have to go, rushing him along. So what are the things in my life right now that I'm rushing Jesus along in and trying to make him come with me and make it happen in my timing?
Yeah. There's a couple things I can already think of in mind for sure that are probably too vulnerable to share. But 100%. I think it's so convicting. And it does feel like, especially having that interruption and seeing him work in somebody else's life, like, all right, well, you're doing this in her life. Like, she's getting this, and I've been praying for this for years, and she's getting it quicker than I am. Or even if she's been working just as long, or like, praying for something even longer. Like, I'm assuming this woman, 12 years was dealing with something.
Yeah.
So she's been going through it for longer, but still to see somebody swoop in right when you feel like your miracle is about to happen and theirs happens instead.
Yeah. And it's the same miracle that Jairus wanted. He's hearing Jesus say to her daughter, your faith has made you well, when it's his daughter that he wants to be made well.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. Like the verbiage, I didn't even think of that. Like he literally says to her daughter, like, your faith has made you well. And then it makes me wonder too, like, I guess we're really pulling from what his emotions could have been, but I think it's so valid because I would have just been a wreck. And I probably would have been thinking to myself, should I have done something differently? Like, what if I just brought her and had her touch his garment?
Yeah.
And then this would have all been, different. And then it's like, okay, like, what should I have done differently to have gotten the miracle sooner? And it's like not about that at all.
Yeah.
At all. It's just like the Lord's timing and like what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I could see myself, I think even now, like, right, what does the Lord want me to do instead to get that miracle quicker? You know what I mean? Or to get what I want quicker kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, what does he want me to leave to his timing? Because if it did happen in Jairus's timing, Jesus probably would have come with him and healed his daughter before she died. But how cool is it that the Lord let this interruption happen, and then he gets there, it looks like all hope is lost, she's already dead. But then Jesus gets to do something even greater in the life of Jairus and his whole family and his daughter, and then they get saved from it,
Could you read the one part of the passage again where it was like, it's after they get the news that she's died, and he was like, Jesus says something there. I forget what it is.
Yes. It says, while he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, do not fear, only believe, and she will be well.
Yeah, like that part I think was so crazy to me. Like, you get even worse news. And again, just going back to like, Jesus was not frazzled. Like, he wasn't like, oh my gosh, shoot, like, what did I do? You know, like, I had to choose one over the other, which I think we look at life like that a lot too in the waiting. It's like, it's either her or me.
Yep. And this person's getting it, so I guess I'm not.
Yeah, but he is not frazzled. He's not taken aback. And he's like, don't worry, like, just have faith. She's going to be healed too.
Yeah. Jesus ministers to both of them.
Yeah. Oh, you go.
I was just going to say, and the cool thing about what Jesus says to him too, do not fear, only believe. It's like the only thing really that Jairus had to hold on to was Jesus's word. Like, that was the only thing really that he could cling to. So it's either like he could trust Jesus's word or not. So Jesus is saying to him, do not fear, only believe. And it's like, it's almost like that's the only thing that Jairus has to go off of is Jesus's word.
Yeah. That's so good. Like just trusting what he says, because there's no other alternative.
Yeah.
And then even wondering, I'm sure, like walking the rest of the way, like what is he gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
Two, I was thinking how powerful it is that he says, again, like in this mindset of like what should I have done differently, almost from Jairus's perspective, to get his miracle even sooner because of this interruption, and now she's dead. And Jesus says, don't fear, just believe. And I feel like that's so good for us too, just in the waiting.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, here's this laundry list of things that you have to be perfect in before you get your thing, which I think, at least I remember, for example, even like waiting for a spouse and thinking like, all right, what does the Lord need me to do first? Like, what is this laundry list of like, I don't know, mindsets or things like I'm not going to get
in order.
Yes, until like I figure this and this out. And it's like not necessarily the case. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there are things that the Lord wants to do in us first, for sure, but we're not earning any of it.
Yeah.
This is just like, just believe.
Yeah. And it's almost too like when you talk about like waiting for a spouse or waiting for something like that, when he says, do not fear, only believe. Like if you do that, do not fear and only believe, Jesus will do the things in you that need to be done maybe before he gives you whatever it is that you're praying for.
So good. Instead of stressing about how am I going to do it?
Yeah. Trying to figure out how I need to get myself in order. What do I need to do? It's like, do not fear, only believe, and Jesus will do it in you.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. I just love this passage so much. Like, and how much too really like waiting on the Lord necessitates. Is that the right word? Necessitates?
Sounds right.
I think it sounds right.
I've ever heard it, but it sounds like a cool word.
I just mean like needs, really. Like waiting on the Lord, just I'm gonna say necessitates. It sounds cool, and I'm hoping it's correct. How it necessitates really just faith and trust in God. Because I think you go to so many passages in scripture where people are waiting on God. Even Joseph, like in prison forever and being a slave before that. And there wasn't, again, like this list of things that it was like, all right, until you do this, like it's just seeking the Lord, obeying the Lord, waiting on him, trusting him.
Yeah.
And then David, like so many different people. But I feel like it can still be really hard to wait on the Lord, especially when you see that comparison.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, the biggest encouragement in this is, or encouragement of, okay, I can trust the Lord's timing, is knowing that he already knows the timing.
Yeah.
It's not that he's making it up as he goes. I feel like that's a big help for me.
Yeah, huge. And also an encouragement, I think, just as we're talking about it, that I realized is like that he can do, just because he's doing it in that person's life doesn't mean it's just for them and not for me. Like he healed that woman. He called her daughter and he healed her. Yeah. And he also healed Jairus's daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the point that you brought up that he called her daughter too. Just from Jairus's perspective, like my daughter.
Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, I was listening to our Pastor Joe, talking about it. And I think he said, shout out Pastor Joe. I think he said that this was the only point in scripture where Jesus called someone daughter. Wow. I think that's what he said. Don't quote me on it, but I think this is the only part where Jesus calls a woman daughter. And it's like, did he do that maybe on purpose? Like as Jairus is standing there knowing that Jairus wants his daughter to be healed?
Yeah.
Like, was that intentional verbiage?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I love that. That's so interesting to really think about. Like, okay. Like, was it supposed to hit a point for him?
Yeah.
In his heart. And two, even showing the heart of God, like, yes, like, just like you love your daughter, like I love like all of my children as much as you love your, like, yeah. I really love people. Like, I really love this woman. I really love your daughter and the way that you're feeling about her right now. Like, I feel too almost, you know, like these like that emotion that you have, that feeling that you have for her, like I feel too for you, for this woman who's bleeding, for your own daughter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because, like, if this was the only part in scripture where Jesus said that, it must have been intentional.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like even if it's not, like it feels intentional for him to say it in front of him.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
But if it is the only one, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like extra intentional. Yeah. I feel like that's so beautiful, just knowing the heart of God, which I think also helps with the waiting. It's like he really does care. Like, I care about you.
Yeah.
I know the whole timeline. I am not freaking out. I remember in counseling just for anxiety, she was saying that, like, we don't have to be, I think it was like fearful of anything that Jesus is not afraid of. That was one thing, which is everything. Like, Jesus isn't afraid.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. And then also just that reminder, like, he's not freaking out. Like, even when we're freaking out because things are going awry in our life, he's not freaking out. He's not thrown.
Yeah, he's not trying to figure it out. He already has it figured out.
He's not trying to figure it out.
That's so good. And piece it all together and work from my own human rationale, but he already has it figured out.
That's good.
The only thing that I have to do is trust, do not fear, and only believe.
Oh, which I feel like is so counter my whole human being, like my whole mindset, like my emotions, everything. Like, I'm like, I have to figure this out. Like, God, like, and sometimes, you know, there's practicality and like, God, help me figure out what to do, you know?
Yeah.
But like putting all of that on myself, and it's like, I have to figure this out now. Sometimes it's like, even because the Lord didn't show up, like he didn't fix this, so now I have to. But yeah, wait, I love what you said. Do you remember it verbatim? It was like, he's not figuring it out.
Oh, he already has it figured out.
So good.
Like, he already had it figured out for Jairus. And it was way better than Jairus could have even figured out for himself. Like, yeah, Jesus could have come and healed her when she was alive, and that would have been so great.
Yeah.
But Jesus wanted to do something even greater.
Yeah. It really reminds me of like Lazarus too, like healing him or raising him from the dead. Because he finds out when he's sick and he waits. He doesn't go either. And it's one of my favorite passages because when, you know, then Lazarus dies and then he is talking to Mary and Martha runs to Jesus. And she's like, oh, like if only you would have been here. But she basically trusts him. She's like, but whatever, like, I know whatever you're going to do, like, you know. But Mary does not come to him until Jesus calls her, which I feel like I was in a Bible class and he was speaking from this perspective. And I've always loved it because I really resonated with it at the moment. It speaks to like a bitterness almost where it's like, she's not running to him. You didn't come. So then he calls her and she comes and she says, Lord, like if you would have been here. But she doesn't finish it like her sister does. She doesn't say like, but like I trust whatever you're going to do. You know who you are. I have to read it verbatim because it's not verbatim what they said. But she just says, if you would have been here, he would have still been alive, and leaves it at that. And that hit me so hard. And then Jesus like weeps and then he heals Lazarus. But it's like he knew his timing the whole time. He heard he was sick and he waited.
Yeah.
He waited. He didn't go right away because he was going to do something better.
Right.
He was going to raise him from the dead. What do you think, or do you have thoughts on that? Or I have a question after.
Oh, go ahead.
For kind of like, I feel like this is a tricky pivot for somebody who is not going to get the miracle that they hoped for. And you're like waiting on the Lord. Like, what is the encouragement in that? I guess in my mind, it's still similar. It's like the Lord isn't freaking out. He loves you like a son or daughter.
Yeah.
And he knows his timing. But sometimes like you're not going to get the raising from the dead.
Like you could be waiting and maybe it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that what you said is right. And like what Jesus said to Jairus, do not fear, only believe. Like he didn't say, do not fear, only believe, I'm going to heal her. He just said, do not wait,
maybe he does.
Oh, yeah, he did. Never mind. I don't know if no, he said she will be made well.
He's like, no worries, I got this. No, but for that specific situation. Yeah. But not always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like he doesn't always promise that he's going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does promise that he's never going to leave us or forsake us.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that is an encouragement. And just that, like, Jesus, he still sees the cares of our hearts. Like, he doesn't, just because maybe he's not gonna heal this person that you want to be healed, it doesn't mean that he doesn't see and know that you want for that to happen. Like, he still cares. He's not just like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that in your life. Like, he does care about the things that are on our hearts.
100%. I love that so much, because I feel like there definitely have been things in my own life that either totally threw me off the rocker or just did not go as I expected, or, whatever it is. And it's kind of like, okay, you can almost feel a little betrayed by the Lord. I for sure have. Just like, I'm pulling from that passage with Lazarus, but like maybe Mary felt like betrayed, But what a comfort to know it's not just that I love how you said it. It's not that he's just like, all right, no, I'm not going to do that. Like next,
Yeah.
But I do really care. But also, like, he knows what he's going to do. Like, he knows our whole lives laid out before us and what's the best actual thing, even though it might not feel best.
Yeah.
And his encouragement is like, don't fear, just believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so good. Don't freak out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Just believe in the waiting. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And another thing that I thought was cool as I was reading through it, like at this point, so Jairus was a ruler of the synagogue, and at this point the Sanhedrin had made a decree like anybody who associates with Jesus will be put out. So another piece of it is that Jairus kind of went against, like he risked really everything to come and fall at Jesus's feet, like his money, his career, his family. He risked everything to come and ask for Jesus to help him. And just what he must have been thinking when he heard that his daughter died, like, oh my gosh, I risked it all and it didn't even pay off. Like, Lord, I came and fell at your feet, and like you didn't work in my life like you said you were gonna. It just must have been heart-wrenching. But just the fact that Jairus's cares were never on the back burner for Jesus. He never tossed them to the wayside. He still was planning to work in Jairus's life.
Yeah, in his perfect timing too.
Yeah.
Like, I think what could feel like we're being cast off is actually just the Lord's like perfect timing, like perfect planning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how powerful. It's like, I gave everything up to trust you and to come to you. And now you're making me either wait or in the moment, because sometimes in the moment it feels like it's not happening.
Yep.
Even if maybe I just need to wait a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so
yeah,
like,
and then
I gave
he hears that his daughter is dead, and it's like, oh, well, then what was all of that for?
Yeah, I'm gonna lose everything for nothing.
Yeah,
that's so good. And it says too that they got saved. You were saying also.
Well, it says at the end,
I guess they believed,
and her parents were amazed.
Yeah, so crazy, because it's like not even then. And I think this is a huge part, actually, I'm just thinking now, of like waiting on the Lord, and specifically like trusting in his plans, is that his plans are also like for his glory, not just like our good. And yes, our good, for sure our good, but like also his glory.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think his glory, and so it's like that he got to do an even more miraculous miracle, that these people now are like his, you know what I mean? And even though right now it says not to tell anybody, but like it's eventually written in scripture and these different stories. And then this other woman being healed publicly, which is actually such a crazy contrast too.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
One, he said
I didn't
nobody
even think about
in.
that.
Yeah.
One, it's in front of a whole crowd of people, and then the next, it's nobody's there and don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he's working in both ways.
Yeah.
But it's just different people, different plans. Both ended up in his glory though.
Uh-huh.
And for the good of people too, like for the good of them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, just the contrast of that. And then there's also like the contrast of this woman for 12 years was in agony.
Yeah.
And Jairus' daughter is 12 years old up until this point. I mean, who knows how long she was sick, but like, she had a life for 12 years and is now at the point of death.
So, I don't know if that, sorry if that made the sound weird. I just hit the microphone. It's cool to think about, like at the same point that in two different worlds, maybe not worlds, but like lives that they don't even really, they're not interlocking at all. Like one person was born and the other one at the same time started this illness that was like totally depleting from her. And at the same time, 12 years later, like they're both going to be healed. But it's like they don't even really know, you know what I mean? That each other exists. And I think, again, it just speaks to like the Lord really cares, even like the details of that fact, like is so cool. I think Esther is one of my favorite books where we just see the Lord's detail like all throughout. And like he really is, even in like the numbers, like the details of things, like he's not scrambling. No. I love that so much. Like he's not trying to figure it out. He already did.
Yeah.
To the T.
already had this plan down to the T of even the whole 12-year contrast. Yeah.
And somebody's struggling for 12 years and maybe we don't know how long she was struggling, but like just the fact that this beautiful life was brought into the world at the time that this other beautiful woman's life, like, but she started really struggling with something.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy. And the Lord's going to meet them in the same like 24 hours, you know? I think it's the same.
Yeah.
I don't know how long the travel was, but
yeah,
probably like same day. So crazy.
Yeah.
It really makes me think like, okay, what are the things? Not even what are the things, like I feel like I know them, but it's like having that mindset shift of, okay, like I'm just going to trust you and not fear, which I feel like fear can be so prominent in the waiting, at least for me. So I'm just going to trust you and know that it's not my job to figure it all out.
Yeah.
It's just my job to trust you and follow you.
Yeah. And with Jairus being a ruler of the synagogue, when I was listening to our pastor, he was saying that Jairus has probably seen Jesus do miracles before. He probably saw the man with the withered hand get healed. Like he has seen Jesus work before. So what he had to hold on to was seeing what Jesus has done for people, and then also what Jesus said to him, do not fear, only believe, she will be made well.
Yeah.
So for us too, I think just an encouraging thing when we're in a waiting period, it's like you can almost hold on to what Jesus has done for you, what you've seen him do in your life before, and then you can also hold on to his word.
Yeah, that's so good. It reminds me, I think, where is it? Maybe in Joshua. There's the stones of remembrance.
Yeah.
And just how important it is to really like cling to, write down, remember the things that the Lord has done in your life.
Yeah.
So that when you're in that next waiting season, you'll be able to see all of that. And that's such a thing to cling to. And then also his word, like, all right, he said either that he was going to do this, or he said not to fear in this, no matter how it turns out, you know, and I can cling to trusting him even when it feels like everything's awry. That's so good. Whether what we're waiting for happens or not, I can look at the past, those stones of remembrance, and at his word.
Yeah, too. And still know that he is good. And that even if he doesn't do what it is that you're praying for, he's still good enough to cling to.
Yeah. And I like what you said too, that reminder. It's like he still cares about the desires of your heart. He still cares about maybe what you're disappointed in. And going back to the Mary and Martha, like Lazarus chapter, the teacher was talking about how like, maybe I should pull it up. Let me see if I can pull this up really quick. But basically, Lazarus, I don't remember what passage it is.
Yeah, I forget
Googling
what.
that. Okay. This is the New King James Version, which I never really read. I usually, what's your go-to? I read the
ESV is always my go-to. I like New King James, but usually I read ESV.
No, same, 100%. Okay. Naturally, it's the few verses before what Google took me to. Hold on. 11. Okay. Oh, 2 actually, like Jesus, it's so funny, like he's kind of sassy about it too. Like beforehand, he hears that Lazarus is sick, and then he waits, and like he's like, all right, let's go to this area. And he says, like, are there not 12 hours in a day? Like, I feel like he's just kind of being sassy. And he says, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. And then he tells them, like, he's dead, which is wild. But anyway, the point that I wanted to get to, sorry for that sidetrack. Okay, so he calls for Mary, and she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, by contrast, just since I pulled it up, Martha says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. Like, because of that faith, you know, like he tells her, kind of like with Jairus, almost like, have faith. And like out of faith, he tells them what's going to happen almost. But with Mary, she just says, if you would have been there, my brother would not have died, period. And Mary came where Jesus was. Oh, wait, that's what I just read. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And then like they invite him to come and see. And then Jesus wept. So the teacher, all of that whole thing to say is the teacher was really emphasizing like he was troubled in spirit because of their sadness. Like,
wow.
Because
Yes.
it's like right after that, like he sees her weeping, he sees others weeping, and then he's groaning in spirit and he was troubled. So I thought that was so profound too, where it's like going back to, it's not that he's careless about your situation. Like, I believe he really feels with us, like when we've been wronged or hurt or something's going wrong, like because of sin in the world, like things just go awry, like whether that's because of people or just life,
circumstances,
like the weather, nature, sickness, like all of it. He feels with us those things. And I think he's heartbroken when we're heartbroken, which is so beautiful. So I think even when he doesn't do what we want, we can really sit with like, but he cares so much.
He knows and he cares.
He really feels like, which I think is so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Wow. It's such a good path. That's one of my favorites.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah, he was saying basically like maybe he's weeping because they're weeping, you know, and it's out of like sadness for them. So good. Wow. But all that to say, like in the waiting, the Lord really does care too.
Yeah. He does. Yeah.
I love it. Oh,
yeah.
So encouraging. Jules, this was so good.
So fun.
So good. I feel so encouraged. I feel like everything you were saying, I was just like, oh, that's some good stuff. And two, just what an encouragement, because I feel like sometimes we're not in a waiting season, but I feel like typically we're in a waiting season for something.
Yeah, for something.
Even if it's not like the biggest thing in our life, like there's things that we're waiting for.
Yeah.
That are taking up our minds and our hearts. And if we're not, we will be.
Yeah.
Or we just were, you know?
Yeah.
And like we're called to wait on the Lord. But what an encouragement this passage is of like, okay, when it feels like that's not going how we thought.
Yeah. And even when it seems like all hope is lost and that's it, it's done, the Lord can still work in it.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like that's it, it's over, she's dead.
Yeah.
But Jesus raised her from the dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's never too far gone for him.
Never too far gone. That's so good. Even I'm thinking in people that we're praying for, like whatever that looks like, the things that we're waiting for, like it's never too far.
Yeah.
For him to work in, which is so crazy. Like we serve such an awesome God who cares so much.
Yeah.
He cares so much. Oh, I love it. Well, Julia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was so encouraging, and you should totally come back soon.
Oh my gosh, I'll come back whenever.
Sometime after maternity leave. Everything before that, it's not happening.
No, maybe in a couple years.
Yeah, no, not a couple years. I don't want to wait that long again. I am so baffled that it really has been years.
I know, yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, she was here a couple months ago. It's like,
I know, it doesn't feel that long.
Like how many years ago?
6 years flew by.
So crazy.
Insane. And how life has changed in those 6 years.
How life has changed. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm realizing now, I think the podcast started in 2020.
What? Oh.
So maybe it was like 4 years ago.
Maybe it was like right when maybe I had just graduated.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just hit me, not even at the beginning, but like now I was like, wait, I think we started it in it was like end of 2020. Post the serious lockdown. Well, I guess it depends.
Yeah. Okay, that makes
sense. Where you're at. Post like it was like red like zone, yellow zone, green zone.
Yeah, let's flatten the curve.
Yes.
Post like that.
Okay. Yeah. It was like after that summer.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my timeline is way off.
No.
I have no concept of time.
Yeah, so it had to have been maybe it was 2020.
Yeah,
maybe it could have been first episodes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I graduated in 2020, so maybe it was like right around then.
Okay. Yeah, or it was like a reflection point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll have to link that too. That was so good. Yeah, thank you so much for being on. This was so awesome. I was so encouraged.
Oh my gosh.
And also convicted about things that
I know this is a very convicting passage. Just when I look at my own heart, like, what am I rushing Jesus in? You know,
so many things for me. I feel like,
yeah. And what if I just let him do it in his timeline? How much greater will it be than what I could even plan? It
really feels scary, I think, sometimes to do that. But I think that, at least for me, and this is something I've known for a while, is like a control thing. And it's a constant like surrendering to the Lord.
Yeah.
Trusting that he just knows better. And like he already knows his timeline. But it can be hard. But yeah, like this is such an encouragement. Like God knew before this day started for them, like what it was going to look like and turn out to be.
Yeah.
And same for us.
Same for us.
Same for us. That's so good. Yeah. Oh, Jules, thank you so much. This is so good. I realized we were like, okay, we'll do 20, 30 minutes. It's like 47, 48.
Wow.
So crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. I love it though. This is so awesome. I was so encouraged. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the She Lives Purposefully podcast. Whether you listen every single week, I adore you if you do. Or, it's your first time, I also adore you. And maybe you listen once in a while, I also adore you too. But feel free to leave a review on the podcast. I just totally blanked there. To share it with a friend. Those are the best ways that you can love on the podcast. Wherever you're listening from, leave a review, subscribe, and then share it with a friend. I hope this episode was so encouraging to you. I know it was to me. And leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube too if you want Julia back on the podcast ASAP. I'll be the first to comment that I do. All right. Love you guys. Live purposefully and live for Jesus.